Hi everyone, and welcome back to week 2 of programming with Python. My name is Corey, and with me today I have Damien.
Hey there.
Hi Damien, and we have everybody in the background working on the Q&A. So we have Amanda and the rest of the team in the background to answer any questions that you might have, okay? And please make sure you're asking questions throughout. And one tip that I would give you is to make sure that you pause the webinar whenever you feel like you want to, whether it's just to catch up or whether it's just to have a look over the code that we just done, okay? So throughout the webinar today, I'll be saying make sure to put us on pause just so you can catch your breath a little bit, okay? Because we're going covering a lot of new stuff today. But before we get into that, let's have a look at your home challenge. So let's recap on what you had to do last week. So you were asked to be able to ask a user 3 questions. What is their name? What is their age? And what is their hobby? And then you were asked to print out the answers in a table like this, okay? So really quickly, we're just going to pop back into notebooks.azure.com and we are going to recap on what we learned last week, okay? So one of the main things that you learned was how to print something to the screen, okay? So we use the keyword print, and I'm going to say, hello world, okay, a famous coding saying. And I am going to say, hello world. Okay, so we knew that print is a keyword because it is in green. So if I just say print hello world and I press run, I'll see hello world. Okay, so we learned a lot about print statements. We also learned a lot about variables, okay? So last week, Damien and Amanda went through what a variable was with you. So let's say I have a variable and I call it x. I'm going to allow x equal to 10. And if I want to actually print what x is, I use my print statement. I say print x. And now I should see 10. Woo! Okay, so again, let's just use y as another variable here, okay? So y is a variable, and I'm going to assign the value 20 to y. And I want to see what y is, so I'm going to print y. Okay, brilliant. So we know our print statements, we know how to print our variables, but you're also asked to get a user input, okay? So I'm going to print this statement, what is your name? Ooh. And then I am going to make sure that name is equal to the user input, okay? So whatever the user puts in name is what name is going to be. So let me just run this now. And I'm going to say Corey. Okay, so that in a kind of nutshell is what you covered last week. But then you were given your challenge, okay, your home challenge. So let's just really quickly go over this. So you were asked for 3 things. You were asked for a name, an age, and a hobby. So I'm going to use my comments here using the hash symbol. And I'm going to say name, age, and hobby. Okay, now under name, I want to say a print statement I'm going to use, and I'm literally just going to say, what is your name? And then I'm going to make name be the input. Okay, and I'm going to do the exact same for age. I'm going to print, and I'm going to say, what is your age? And then I'm going to create the variable age, and I'm going to make that an input, okay? And last but not least, the exact same thing again, I'm going to say print, and I'm going to say, what is your hobby, okay? And I'm going to create a variable called hobby, and I'm going to equal that to be an input. So if I run this now, it's going to say, what is your name? And I'm going to say Corey, and now Corey is going to be stored in name. It's saying, what is my age? And I'm 27. So now 27 is going to be stored in age. And what is my hobby? And I'm going to say coding, because we're coding today. And coding is going to be stored in hobby. Okay. So now I have all my inputs stored. Okay. And now what I want to do is I want to do the home challenge table now. So I'm using my comments here just to kind of, if anybody's looking, they can read through it and they can say, oh yeah, okay, that's where we're at. But remember, our computer actually skips past comments. Computers can't read anything that has the hash symbol. So it's kind of just for humans. All right. So what I'm going to do is, I know that I want to create that table, and for aesthetic purposes, I'm going to use those dashes to kind of separate everything. So a dash is a character. So it can go into my print statement here. I'm going to just do that. And then what I'm going to say is, let me think. I'm going to print. And I want to print the name, okay? So I'm going to use a little straight line here for a division, and I'm going to say name and another line. And I want to add the user's name here. And how we add something into a print statement is we use that comma. Okay, so I have name is going to be the name that is stored, which is Corey. And then I want another straight line. So I am going to do my inverted commas and a straight line. And I'm going to do the exact same for age and the exact same for hobby. So I'm going to say print. And again, my inverted commas and my line. Age, my line. And I want to add the age, so I'm using a comma. And I'm putting in the variable age. And I want to add another line. So I'm going to do my inverted commas again and a line. And last but not least, I'm going to do the exact same thing for hobby. So I'm going to print. And I'm going to use my line again, hobby and a line. And then I'm going to do a comma and hobby. And last but not least, our last line. Now, I'm going to just print this out and see what it looks like, but I might have to make some changes to it, okay? And that's all right. So I'm going to run this. Okay, so that looks good, and I'd be happy enough with that. But for me, I want those dashes at the end too. And I also want them in between all the statements that I've made. So I'm going to take this, and I'm just actually going to right-click and copy it. And what do you think, Damien? Will I pop it down the end here?
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
And now I know if I run this, I'm going to get those dashes at the end. But as I said, I actually want them after name. So I'm going to press Control and C and Control and V. And I want them after age as well. And I'm going to print this out and see what it looks like and see if I'm happy with it. So I'm going to run again. And you know what? I'm pretty happy with that. Now, I could be here all day making sure that that line at 27 matched these, but I think I'll leave that to you at home. I'm sure yours is definitely more aesthetically pleasing than mine is. So well done, everyone, if you got that far. Amazing work. That is pretty hard going. And if you didn't get that far, don't worry, okay? This is all a process. As Amanda and Damien said last week, coding and Python is a language. So you're really learning a new language here. And the more you practice, the more you'll be immersed in it and the easier it will become, okay? So don't be disheartened if you're not getting it the first time, okay? I think that took me to even get there like 15 tries, I'm not even joking. So let's pop back into our PowerPoint, and we learned about variables last week, okay? But this week we're actually learning about variables and data types. So for example, we might have a variable called my name, and in my name, I'm going to store Michael. Okay, but you might notice here that Michael is in our inverted commas, and that's known as a string, okay? But there's more than just a string in Python. There's 4 basic data types. So we have our string, which is usually one or more characters, so letters or words. So you might have heard me there saying, I'm going to put my line in my inverted commas because it's a string. That line was a character, wasn't it? Okay, so any words or letters, they can go inside those inverted commas like Michael or Corey or that line. But then we also have integers, which are also known as ints. And these are just positive or negative whole numbers. So literally it can be -3, 87, 12. They're all ints. And then we have floats. So a float is a number with a decimal point or decimal place, okay? And again, they can be positive or negative. So it might be -13.2 or 22.8. They're all floats, anything with a decimal place. And then lastly, we have our booleans, okay? And this just means whether the variable is either true or false. So the whole purpose today is to have a look at variables and data types. And Damien is going to talk us through now an example and a problem where data types are going to come in really handy.
Thanks, Corey. So I'm going to share my screen, guys. We'll take a look here. So we're going to try and solve this problem. And by solving this problem or coding up this problem, it's going to show us why data types are really important. Okay, so here we have an example. You're starting a new job and we need to record how much somebody is getting paid. That's your job. All right, so we're going to write a little computer program that makes it easy for us to do so. And the stuff that we need in this program, we need the person's name. We need to be able to enter how much they earn or how much money they make. And we're going to make it easy at the start. They can either only earn €100 or €200. Then they could also do a little bit of overtime or extra time, and that will get them a little bit of extra money, either 23.20 or 46.40. Then we're going to add the two numbers together to see how much they earn altogether that week. All right, so we're going to code this up in our Azure notebooks. But before we do that, we're going to look at something called pseudocode. Corey, I don't know, have you heard of pseudocode? Do you know what it is?
Yeah, I actually love pseudocode because I think it has a really cool name. It's when we write out our code in kind of basic terms, isn't it? Without using any coding language, just in simple English. What are we trying to do? Yeah,
it gives us a little plan before we kind of dive into a project. And it does make it easier, definitely for as the projects get bigger, the jobs get bigger, to just have a bit of a plan so you know kind of what you need to do. So if I look at these kind of tasks again that I need my program to do, the first thing I need to do is enter a person's name. So if I think about that, well, the first thing I'm going to need to ask for the name. Now, my handwriting isn't very good, guys, so you're going to have to bear with me with this. Ask for name. And then I'm going to need to get name. Now, Corey, how would I ask for the name, do you think? What would I need to use, or what would I need to do?
To ask for the name, you could use like a print statement and then maybe get user input for the name.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we'd be using our print statement to ask for the name, and we'd be using our input to get the name. All right. Then once I've got the name, I'm going to have to go back and look here. So I need to get their weekly wage. So I need to ask for wage, and I need to get wage. Okay, and again, this is going to need a print, and it's also going to need an input. Okay, then I have to get so I have to ask for overtime, and this one's a little bit repetitive. We're kind of doing the same steps over and over, which is good because it'll make things a little bit easier. If we get a problem in one thing, we'll be able to solve it for the rest. So ask for overtime, and then get overtime. And then we need to work out total. So ask for overtime is going to be a print again. I'll just put a P there. Get overtime, that's going to be an input. Just put an I there. And then to work out the total, we're going to need to look at something new. We're going to use a little bit of maths here. Okay, I'm sure you all love maths. All right, so we'll try and program this up. All right, so we're going to go to our notebooks now. I'm going to go to my browser, and I have a notebook open, ready to go. All right, so if you are struggling a little bit here, you might need to pause it and open up your notebook so that you're ready, and then we'll kick off from there. So we'll start off. We're going to put in a comment just to kind of explain what our code is going to do here, our program is going to do. So this program works out the wages somebody gets. Okay. And the first thing we said we had to do was we had to ask for someone to enter a name. So I'm going to have a print statement. Please enter name. I might have made a mistake here. I need some brackets. Okay. Please enter name. Then after that, I'm going to need an input. So for an input, we need a variable. So I've got name. Name equals input. So this should get in somebody's name and I should be able to use that. Then I'm going to have to ask for the wages. So print, please enter weekly wage. And then I need another variable. So when we're naming our variables, guys, you want to kind of use names that make sense to us. The computer doesn't really mind what you use as long as there's no spaces in the names, but we should kind of use words that kind of make sense to us. So I'm going to say weekly wage equals input. Now we need the third thing, which is our overtime. So print, please enter overtime. And then we'll put in a variable for overtime equals input. Then finally, we need to do a little calculation. So this is the first little bit of maths we've done. So I'm going to have a variable called total here, and I'm going to let it equal to the weekly wage. So the input, whatever the people put in here for our weekly wage, that's going to be saved in the variable called weekly wage. So if I want to add that to overtime, I'm just going to use the variable names. So weekly wage, whatever numbers in weekly wage, plus overtime is going to equal to the total amount of money that the person makes. And finally, we might just print out that message to show how much they earn. So print, and what we'll do, we'll put in the person's name. So name, and that won't go into our quotations because we want to go and actually get whatever the name is from up here. So name, and then we put a comma here so that we can put in some actual text. Name earns. I'm going to put in another comma here because I'm going to put in this total amount. Total, comma, euro this week. So this print statement is a little bit confusing, but hopefully we can kind of figure it out. So it will take the variable name, whatever's entered there, put it in, earns, write out the word earns, then it'll put in whatever's saved in total here, euro this week. So let's run this. Let's see if I have any errors or anything. So please enter name. Damien. Enter weekly wage, 100. Enter overtime. So let's say 23.20. And then it tells me Damien earns €10,023.23 this week. Okay, so that's a problem.
That's a lot of money, Damien.
A lot of money, yeah. Corey or Amanda, maybe you guys could help me out here.
Yeah,
problem.
Yeah, Corey's just checking something there. So, yeah, so I think we were talking there about data types, Damien. Would that help in this instance? We're not just looking at strings anymore, aren't we? Not. You were saying you didn't have to put that in a string. So maybe we can go back up through our lines and figure out what actually type of data are we dealing with these different things.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So when the computer gets all of these inputs, the computer thinks that they're words. Even if you put in a number, the computer thinks that it's a word. Python thinks whenever it gets an input that it's a word. So really, when I say I'm adding these two things together, it's just putting two words together. So it puts the word 100 and it puts the word 2320 together. So we need to make sure that Python knows that these aren't words, these are numbers. So Amanda, I don't know, like here I'm entering a weekly wage and that was either 100 or 200. What data type do you think might be good for that?
So 100 or 200 would be a whole number. So if I think back to that slide Corey looked at earlier, whole numbers were integers, weren't they?
Yeah, that's right. And we can turn this into an integer by putting int in front of our input. So what this is saying to the computer now is it will take in whatever the user gives it, so whatever the user types in, and then it will turn it into an integer and save it to weekly wage. And then down here for overtime, an integer might not work here because we had a decimal point in our number. So we might have to use a different type here. And I think in the slide earlier on, it said that float was used for decimal numbers. So we'll put this as a float. So that whatever's entered into the computer will turn it into a decimal point number. And hopefully now our computer will be able to kind of deal with this. So we'll run this again and see if it works. So €100, 23.20. And here you can see that it adds it up much better. 100 plus 23.20 gives you €123.2.
Not much money for you now, Damien.
Yeah, that's a little bit better. Although I would have liked the other money.
Yeah.
So here, guys, this is just to show you that it's really important to understand our data types, because if we don't, the program won't do really what we want it to do. And if you're entering a string, you don't need to put anything in front of your input. But if you're entering an integer, a float, or a Boolean, you will need to tell the computer what it is for it to work. Okay, so now we are moving on, I think. So we're moving on to a little bit of maths. Amanda, I don't know, do you want to take this or will I keep going?
Yeah, perfect. I can bring everyone through this one, no problem. Happily. Okay, guys, so we are going to have a little look at when we're dealing with maths. So we're going to be using what we call maths operations or operations with this one. And what we're looking at here is that the symbols we're going to have to use. In some cases, they're similar to what we use in maths, and in some instances, they're not, which you can probably see in the table that we're looking at there. So when we're looking at different operations, such as addition, we're going to be using the plus symbol. So you can see we have our table there. Addition is going to be with our addition symbol, our plus symbol. Subtraction with our minus symbol. Now, they're the same. But when we get down further, we're looking at multiplication. So that's different, Damien, to when we're in maths class, isn't it? When we're doing a multiplication sum, we're not going to be using a star or an asterisk like we are in that instance. We'd be normally using like a cross.
Yeah,
so
a little bit different.
Yeah, so asterisk in that instance is going to be a little bit different when we're using our Python programming. If you want to multiply, you know, your two numbers, you're going to have to use that little asterisk symbol instead. Division then is also a little bit different. Instead of our divide symbol that we'd be used to in maths, we're going to actually use a forward slash. So it's going to be a little bit different too. So they're the four that we're going to be focused on today and have a little look at today. But we do want to mention two others that in the coming weeks we will look at as well. So it's kind of useful to say them now. Don't worry about them too much because they're probably new ones for some people. So another one we might look at and use the symbol for is to the power of. So for example, we might say 12 to the power of 2, okay, in maths. So when we're doing power of, we actually combine those two little asterisks or two little stars together. Is that fair enough, Damien?
Yeah, that sounds perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other one that's really useful for us in coding is to use modulus, something they call modulus or the remainder. And in that instance, we're going to use our percentage symbol. So the two of them, the last two on the table there, don't worry about them too much. You are going to be looking at them in the coming weeks and we'll do some really clear examples of how they can be used to help us with our code. But for now, we're going to just focus on the first kind of four. Now, what you guys can do at home, if you like, is you can actually have a look at some examples of that. So what about this one here, Damien? This is kind of the example we were thinking of. So what we can do is we can create a variable, you know, in our notebook. So you guys can feel free to pause and do this now. Create a variable in our notebook for number 1. And we give number 1, we assign the value 12 to number 1. So our variable is number 1 and the value is 12. And then we create another variable called number 2. and we assign the variable 5, okay? And then what we want to do is print kind of the sum of those things. If we do, for example, the first line you can see there, we can say print number 1 plus, so we're using our operation that we just looked at in our last slide, plus number 2. But then we can substitute the different symbols we've just learned about. So instead of addition, maybe we want to subtract, or maybe we want to multiply, or maybe we want to divide. So if you guys want to pause now and actually go in, create 2 variables. You don't have to use the same numbers as us there. You could use different numbers to 12 and 5. Isn't that fair enough, Damien? They can try out.
Yeah, try any numbers and see how they work.
Yeah, play around.
Predict what answer you think you might get before you actually run it.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, exactly, a bit of mental maths there as well. And then the last 3 that you see there at the bottom, so print number 1, do you see the two asterisks, the 2 stars to the power of, remember? So if you did want to try that today, remember, don't worry about that too much, you could. So the third last one is to the power of 2. The second last example there is to the power of 3, okay? And then the final one is the modulus. But again, we will delve into that. So for today, if you want to even just play around with some addition, subtraction, multiplication and division, and pause now and do that. And then when you come back, we're going to slightly move on and maybe look at how we can use some of them now and to improve on the program we just developed. So do you want to take them through that, Damien? Maybe we can now look at the program we just done and see, can we actually add to what we're doing with that program now?
Yeah, sounds good. So we're going to kind of improve on our program that we just did a couple of minutes ago. We had asked for the person's name. We were entering how much they earned, but usually that's not really the way it works when you're working out in the real world. You kind of have to work a certain amount of hours and you get paid for those hours. So we're going to change up our program a little bit. All right. We're going to get the user to enter the number of hours that they worked. And then we're going to do a little calculation to figure out, well, how much money should they get for doing all of those hours? All right. So, and then we're also going to do the same sort of idea for our overtime. We're going to ask how many hours did that person work? And we're going to multiply it by the number or the amount of money they get per hour. And we'll try and put it all together again. So we'll go back to our code, and what we might do, I'm going to leave this program here because this worked pretty well and I'm pretty happy with it. But a lot of this we might use again. So I'm going to copy this code. So you can right click and copy, or you can press Control-C, and I'm going to bring it down to a new window down here and press Control and V, and that should paste it in here. So again, this program works out the wages somebody gets. That's grand for a little comment at the top. Print, please enter your name. So that's what we want here. All right, we want to get the person's name. Here, we're going to change this a little bit. All right, so we want to ask how many hours did, and I'm going to put in the person's name here. So how many hours did? So I'm going to go back to this variable called name, and we're going to put that in. So comma, name, comma, and then work this. So when we've entered something for the name there, let's say it's Damien. How many hours did Damien work this week? That sentence seems to make a bit of sense. But this here now, we've got our variable ready to go. All right, but is this name, Amanda, do you think this name is still okay for the variable, or should we change it?
So we're looking at hours now, aren't we, Damien? So maybe we can kind of reflect that with our variable name so it's really clear.
Yeah, so we might change this to weekly hours. Okay, and we'll leave it as an input and an integer. All right, so we're going to enter how many hours somebody worked here. Okay, now we're going to do a little calculation then underneath this. So if I work 10 hours and I get €10 for all of those hours, how much money do I get altogether? Well, hopefully the computer can kind of work this out for us. So we'll create a new variable called weekly wage, and that's going to equal to our weekly hours HOURS, and multiply by. Amanda, can you remind me what the multiply symbol is again?
Yeah, so we use the little asterisk or the little star.
Brilliant. So weekly
I keep
hours.
saying boats because people use boats to me. So
asterisk
what would you say?
or star?
Yeah, which one would you go with?
Yeah, I usually say star, but I think I hear both, definitely. So here, whatever the weekly hours is, we're going to multiply it by 10, and that will give us our weekly wage. Okay, now we're going to go down to the second part. So please enter, we're going to change this print statement. Please enter the number of overtime hours that, and we'll put in the person's name here, that name. So here we're waiting for the person to enter the number of hours that the employee worked. Should I change this to an integer, Amanda, or should I leave it as a float?
So we're looking, what we need to check, I suppose, Damien, what is our number again?
Yeah, so it's for hours or time, and like.
Yeah. So I suppose some people work like, 6.5 hours, don't they? So they'd have to say 6.5. So it depends on what their hourly. That's an interesting one. Actually, I think someone asked that in the questions there. So what do we think? If we are going to have decimals, we're going to have to use float, aren't we?
Yeah, because integers just won't work if there's going to be a decimal. So maybe it would be better off to change this to a float. And up here, because if there is any chance that the number could be a decimal, we should probably use float.
We should use our float, yeah.
Yeah. So float there and float there. Okay, and this is overtime hours. Then down here, we'll have overtime wage. So this is our variable for working out. I spelled that wrong. Overtime wage equals to, and it's going to be our overtime hours multiplied by, and the rate for overtime hours was €15.20 in this question. So I'm going to multiply this by 15.2. And you can put 20 there if you want. Okay, so now we're nearly at the end. We're just going to change our total sum here. All right, so the total is going to equal to the weekly wage. And the weekly wage is here, so that looks right. Plus overtime. Now, I'm just going to run this, but I think we might get a problem down here. We'll just put in, so I work 10 hours. I do 2 hours of overtime. And then it's giving me an answer here, but that's not really the answer that should be getting, because it's not actually adding here this overtime, or it's getting this bit a little bit wrong. So we're going to have to make sure that we have our variables right. So overtime wage should go here. Okay, so total equals to weekly wage plus overtime wage, and then we're going to print out name earns total euro this week. We try run that and see. Okay. Oh, Damien, I worked 20 hours, and then I worked 2 hours overtime. And we can see here that Damien earns €230.4 this week. So that's better than the first time.
Brilliant.
Yeah, we take that. Okay. Yeah, so hopefully that makes sense, guys. Amanda, I don't know, do you have any questions on that, or you're happy enough?
No, I'm really happy with that. I think that's so cool that we can, pre-prepare a program. So if you think about a company, they could have this pre-prepared and it tots everything up for them automatically, or, if they got really advanced, maybe the employee could be entering this into an app and it could be figuring it out. So it just shows you kind of the basis, even with these basic programming and bits of information or knowledge, we can actually kind of make something that's pretty advanced. It's cool.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay. So we recap, Damien, will we?
Yeah, I think so.
That's kind of a lot. I think that's a lot for today, and everyone's done really, really well with all that. Yeah, Brilliant. Okay, so let's have a recap, everyone, over what we've learned today, which is again quite a lot. And obviously, if you're at this point now and you still haven't done some of that stuff, pause, go back, practice, because we talked about last week the importance of practice with these things and how programming in general is a language, and that's because it's all about immersing yourself and practicing. So well done getting that far. So let's have a look on the few things we did pick up on today, or the few things we did learn. So the first thing we looked at today, which is so important, is the concept of data types. So that in programming and in Python in particular, what we're looking at, we have different data types. And the 4 that we wanted to look at today or address today were strings. Okay, so our characters are alphanumeric, so letters, numbers, and characters. Once they're in those inverted commas, there are strings. Our integers or our ints, which were our whole numbers. Our floats, which remember were our numbers that had decimals, decimal places involved. And then our Boolean. And we'll delve into Boolean more in the coming weeks, won't we, Damien?
Yeah, we will look at it a little bit more, and they actually are very useful, even though it's only 2 options, true or false.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll look at those as well. The other thing we looked at was the idea that we could add comments. Remember, we talked about the hash symbol. Corey referenced it, and you could see Damien using it there as well. So the fact that we can use that hash symbol to add comments for ourselves, so that we can actually see really clearly what our program is doing, but also to also review. So if you come back to your program next week, that you'll see your little comments and go, oh yeah, that's what I was trying to calculate here, or that's what I was trying to do. As we do more advanced programs, again, these are so useful because they give you that guide yourself. So very useful to use our hash symbol and our commenting system. Also, what we looked at today and we tried to show you was the importance of not being afraid, I suppose, from stepping back from the computer and the coding to actually maybe write down what are we trying to do here. As we do more advanced programs and we add more layers to things, we're going to need to do that. And I know personally speaking, when I was learning how to program in Python, anytime I got an assignment, the first thing I did was get my paper and my pen out and actually sketch out what am I trying to do here and map it out with pseudocode. So Damien, you'd agree with that. As we do more, we're going to need to do that kind of mapping out process away from the computer first to get our head right.
Yeah, definitely. And often people feel like just try to dive in, but it really does save you time and get you kind of thinking in the right way to do a little bit of planning before you go straight into your code.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't emphasize that enough, guys. So definitely feel free, even if you want to give yourself your own little challenge there over what we learned today, write it out first. Okay, I'm going to try this, this, and this, and then go in and code it. And lastly, we looked at maths operations, okay, or operations today. And specifically, like we said, we just wanted to look at the kind of the basic maths ones, the addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. But we did mention the idea of looking at to the power of a number, or our modulus, and we will look at them more in the coming weeks as well. Okay, so they're the kind of key things we learned today. Now, like last week, we do want to give you a little challenge just so that you're pushing on your knowledge and you're getting that practice in that we talked about before our lesson next week. So what we want you to do is we want you to create a program that will calculate an average grade for you. So what you're going to have to do is in the box there on the left hand side of your screen. We want you to create the program that asks the user to do the following. So the first thing we want you to ask the user to do is enter the subject. So for example, in Damien's picture example on the right, the subject was English, okay? Then it was enter a result for that subject. So the next thing the user gets asked to do is to enter a result for the subject, and we enter our result. And in that instance, in our example picture, it was 86. Well done, Damien, great result in English.
Yeah, I was doing well.
Yeah. Then it's going to do that for 3 different subjects. So if you see in the picture, it's not just English, it's asking for Irish and maths also. So same kind of questions, but just different subjects. So what subject are you entering for? Irish, what was your result? And we enter that, okay? Now that's all fine. But then what we want you to do is we want you then to program so that the results you entered, those 3 results, we get the average of them. So we get the average grade. So what you're going to have to do is use your operators there to add up the 3 subject results, okay? And then divide that total by 3 to get our average grade. And if that's not challenging enough, we also want you to print this into a table, which is something we did in last week's home challenge. So similar idea, we're just using our dashed lines. Corey recapped over that at the start of how we could use our lines to kind of make a neat table with these results. So there's a couple of steps there. So again, take your time with it. We're trying to merge together everything we've done to now. So it always is useful to look back through your code from last week and even today to kind of figure out those few little bits as a recap. And no doubt then you'll do absolutely fine with your home challenge. Is there anything else there, Damien, we want to add? Everyone's okay with that, hopefully.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. And if you're able for this sort of stuff, you're flying at it. All right, yeah. We're moving pretty quick, and it's really good stuff. So well done.
Brilliant. Now, another thing we want to mention, guys, is we are running a competition at the moment in Microsoft globally, but also at a local level in Ireland. For Microsoft Ireland, we have a competition for Irish students to enter. It's called the Imagine Cup Junior, and we've already done the first episode of this last Friday, but if you missed it, you can watch that back and you can go to the web link there, the DSHomeSpace web link, to see the playlist and watch it back. Because we're going to be kicking off episode 2 this Friday on that, and it's all around AI for good and artificial intelligence. Python is one of the languages used most by programmers nowadays looking at artificial intelligence. So these two series go hand in hand, and we think if you're enjoying this, then you definitely have a really good idea of how you can enter a good project and win some really good prizes with the Imagine Cup as well. So feel free to catch up on last week's lesson and join us this Friday for the Imagine Cup Junior and learn how you can enter into that competition. Okay, so we're going to just have a quick look at some questions, Damien, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So one of the questions here is asking about your variable name, why you have a lowercase letter in the first part of the word and then a higher case letter or an uppercase letter then.
Yeah, so it's actually, it's just kind of what is usually done when people are coding Python or a lot of different languages. It's called camel case. So you always kind of start with a small letter, but if you have two words coming together, because you can't put a space in there, we use a capital letter to show us where the second word is starting, and it just makes it a little bit easier to read what the variable is. But it's just kind of what people have done when they're coding, and it's kind of convention to do it.
Okay, brilliant. That's perfect. So that's kind of it. I think everyone else seems happy enough, Damien. There's no other kind of pressing questions there, so that's perfect. So we will pick up next week, guys, as usual at 1 o'clock, and hopefully to get some practice with your home challenge in between then. We will also share Damien's notebook from today, which we did last week as well, so that if you wanted to recap over Damien's notebook from today, you can see that. And that's on our link. I'll just put that up now, our HomeSpace files. So if you go to HomeSpace files, you'll see there is an area for programming with Python, and if you click into there, you'll see all the various resources that we'll build up over the weeks that will help you with this, okay? So until then, we will chat to you next week. So until then, take care, everyone. See you later. Bye.
Bye now. Thank you.